Where did we stop? We're talking about Spring Framework, right? Okay. So in the last class, we were going through the Spring MVC. So we saw that Spring MVC flow. Yes. Okay. So today we'll talk about the support which we got here in the Spring MVC. We'll see what kind of support we got here in the Spring MVC. Okay. Yes. So you'll find that Spring provides auto population support. Spring provides auto population support. Uh, the request information, whatever we have. So as of now, we have to read that request information. Okay. You see, in the order controller, we did that. So in the order controller, what we are doing, so we are reading that request information this way through the request object. But you'll find that in the framework here, so we got the support for pre-populating this form data. Yes. How it is possible? Let's see. So we can just leave it to the framework itself. So that framework itself will populate this form data into this order object. We can do that. Yes. So let's see this. People are just joining. Okay, so let me quickly repeat this. So today we'll go through the support which is provided by Spring Framework for auto-populating that form data or request information into this Java objects. So what does that mean? You see, in the last class, I was talking about reading that request information. We saw how to read the request information. So we have an order form, right? So when that form is submitted, the controller will be called, and this controller is actually reading that form data explicitly. You see, you have to write this code to explicitly read the form data. Yes. So let's check this first of all. Um, if you want to avail that auto population support of, of, of form data or request information into this Java object, so we have to slightly change this code. So, but before that, okay, let me just create a new Spring MVC project here. So let this Maven tool build this project. Okay, so now the project is built. So once again, so people who have just joined, I'm going to demonstrate how to auto-populate that form data into the Java objects here, so that we don't have to explicitly read the form data here. Now, for that, first of all, let me take this form. We got this. Oh, sorry. Core project has been created here. Let me just change it. Okay. Okay. So here you see I got the same order form. So this time I'm placing the order form in this views folder. Okay. Yes. I'm placing the order form in the views folder. Under the webin we have this. Okay. So previously I've directly placed it in the web app folder. So you can just check the comparisons. You'll find it. Now you see we got this form. You'll find that here whenever this form is submitted on the server side, we need a controller to process this form request, right? And the controller, first of all, it has to read that form data, that request information, right? Now we'll avoid this. Okay, we'll avoid. Here, instead, we'll just leave it to the framework to read that form data and provide it to this controller by storing it in a object. Yes. So in order to store this form data, we'll use this order class. We have a class called as order. Okay. So let me copy both the classes and then copy the whole package. You see, you have this order class and we have this properties like order ID or product ID and the requested quantity. Yeah, first of all, you please make sure that this form field names and the property names are same here. Okay. Yes. Now, whenever this form is submitted, I want that form data to be populated into this product object. Okay. Yes. Populate the form data into the product object here. That is what I want to do. Into this order object, I'm sorry. So this order object, you'll find that it is a command object. Order object is actually a command object here. So, you know, you'll find that this order object properties will be populated with that form data. So for that, now we have to register this order object with the framework. Okay. So let's define a controller first of all. Already we have a controller, right? So I'm going to use that controller, order controller. Okay, or else let me just delete this code completely, whatever we got here, and write it later on. Now, so this controller, let's say it is responsible for processing that form request, okay, order form request. As I told you people, I would like to avail that auto population support. Yes. So for that, what I'll do is here, in this controller, I will add a method this way, say process order. You can give any name to this method you wish. Say show order view. You can call, you can give any name you wish. So you see, this method is a user-defined method in a controller. And you know what? I'm going to use this method to register the command object. You know, this order class is a command class, I can say now. We call it as a command class. In Spring Framework, so basically command class objects are used to store form data. In Spring Framework, we use command class objects to store form data. We say command objects. Command object means, when I say command object means the object which can hold form data. So we have order form here, right? You see in the order JSP, we got order form. Now this order form data, I want it to be automatically populated into, I want this form data to be automatically populated into this order object, order class object. Okay. So this order object now, it is a command object, I can say. Okay. So we have to register this command object in the framework. For that, we'll be using this method. Okay. Yes. So not only to register that command object, but also, so what we'll do is here, we'll also return that input JSP name, that order JSP, that view component details also, this method will return. Yes. So this method will take an object called as model map object. Yes. Model map object. So this model map object is actually used to register that command object. Okay. Model map dot add attribute order. So I'm registering a command object with the framework. So that framework will use this command object to populate the form data. Okay. So that is what we are doing, registering command object. And then this method is also supposed to return that input JSP name. So what is the input JSP here? So, you know, that order JSP is the input JSP through which users will supply that form data, that order details, right? That is the input JSP. You got the point? Input JSP is the JSP or which is used by the users to supply the input data, you can say. Okay. I need couple of minutes, please. Just give me a couple of minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry. So now this method, it has to return the input JSP name, order JSP. That's the name, not the extension. So what it does, returns input JSP name. That's it. Now annotate this method with request mapping in the URL. We need to configure a URL for this method. Let's say order process order, process order. And I want this method to handle HTTP method get request. So what this method, request method dot get. Okay. So now it indicates that whenever the client places a request for this URL process order using HTTP method get, so this method will be invoked. Okay. So we have mapped the URL for this method now. Next, here, from now on, if you want to access this order JSP, you have to use this URL itself. You have to use this URL process order. You cannot directly place the request for the JSP name. You cannot directly place the request for this JSP. I hope you people got the point. So you're not supposed to directly place the request for this JSP. Yes. So if you see you use this URL. So when you have to place the request for this method in turn will provide the JSP. How? Let's say all of you listen to me carefully. So when you place a request for this URL process order, you know what happens? First of all, this method will execute, and this method will register a command object with the framework, so that you see the framework will use that command object to populate the form data into that command object. Okay, it will populate the form data into the command object, I can say. Yes. So after that, this method, it returns that view name. The input JSP is a view itself, right? It returns the view name through which users can supply the input data. Users can supply input data. So here, you know what? When this method returns that input JSP name, the framework will take that view name. Okay, it will take that view name, and what it does, generally, what a framework does with that view name, what do people think? What a framework does with the view name? Yes,
It displays the view.
uh, it displays the view. In order to display the view, first of all, the framework will refer that view name to the view resolver. Yes, that's right. So it will refer it to the view resolver. Now you see you got a view resolver configured in this. internal resource, sorry, we have a view resolver configured here, okay? Yeah. So my voice, it might be little low today, I'm sorry, though no one has complained, because I'm still little bit, sorry, a little sick. So please bear with me. So you see, this view resolver will take that view name. So framework will refer that view name. What is the view name? Order. That is the view name which is written. So now this view name will be prefixed with webend views and suffixed with .jsp, which becomes the complete location of the JSP. It becomes the complete location of the JSP. Yes. Here, I'll take this JSP, sorry, the framework will take this path. So this is the location where you got the JSP page. See, order.jsp. This is the path. So simply the JSP will be called here. That's it. So that is what happens. But we have to also make some changes to this JSP page. Okay. So now what I'll do is here, I'll be using, okay, no, we'll do this. We'll use this form. Okay. So let's first try to test this application. Okay. We'll deploy this application on the server. So in the Pivotal server, if you have any other application, you can just remove it. So this is the default web server which you'll find in this STS. If you want, you can integrate Tomcat also and work with it. But already there is a server now, so this should work fine. Doesn't matter. All the servers are same. They provide same set of features. Okay. Now you see, you got the path here. So let's do one thing. This is the application's path. What I'll do is now, I'll place the request for that URL. What is it? Process order, right? You see, I'm placing the request for this URL. And we're using which HTTP method? You see, if you type in the address of the resource in the address bar, if you type in the address of the resource in the address bar, then it will be HTTP method get request itself. The client always, the browser, it always uses HTTP method get itself. Yes. So I'll press enter. You see, that form should be displayed here for us. See, you got that order form. So this is what happens. So now, so far, what we did here, is it clear for you people? Please let me know. So as of now, we have just written the code to display that form. To handle that form request, we have to add one more method. Don't worry about it. As of now, what we did, is it clear? You see, this is a controller. So this controller has got a method. When it is invoked, it registers a command object and returns the input JSP name. Yes. When I say command object, what does that mean? Yes. What is a command object? Yeah, the command object basically it holds form data. Yes. So we use command object to store form data. Yes. That is a command object. So now I hope you people got it. Now when I submit this form, okay, when this form is submitted, we need to handle that request. So what to do? What do people think? What are we supposed to do? Can you people tell me? You know, to handle this form request, we need we need a controller, right? Yes. Now the question is, can we make use of the same controller? We have that order controller, right? So can we make use of the same controller to handle that form request? I can say yes, we can make use of it. Here, what I will do is, I will add one more method here to this controller. This time, this method returns a model and view object. So we can return a model and view object, or we have another option I'll show you. We can also return a model object. You know, yeah, we have two options. The controller method can return a model and view object once it is done processing the request, or it can return a model object also. So what is the difference? I'll tell you. Generally, here, why the controller uses this model and view object? Let's try to first quickly review it. What do you people think? Why the controller uses model and view object? In the model and view object, you'll have the response data, right? In the model and view object, you'll have the response data as well as the details about the view component which is supposed to render the response. We got both the details. The name itself indicates model and view. Model represents the response data. View means the view component which is supposed to render the response. Both the details you'll have it in the model and view object. So that is how the controller returns that response data, right? So how the controller returns the response data to the framework through this model and view object itself. Through the model and view object itself, it returns the response data here, right? Yeah. So, but here, instead of using model and view object, we can also make use of model object. Yes, but model object, it can only hold the response data. Okay, in the model object, you'll only have response data. Okay, so how about the view name? How about the view name? The view name, we can return it explicitly. View name, we can return the view name explicitly to the framework. That is possible. Yeah. So how? You see, first sorry, make sure that this method's return type is not model. I'm sorry, it should be string type. So what this method does is it returns that view name. View name will be a string always, right? So this time the method return it won't return model and view object, but it returns the string value. It is nothing but the view name, and it uses that model object to share the response data. It uses model object to share the response data here. Okay, so that model object also, this controller need not explicitly create that model object. You know, here the framework itself will provide that model object to the controller. Framework itself will provide the model object to the framework. Yeah, yes. Sorry, to the controller. Yes. So let me just define a method, process order request. The parameter for this method will be model object. Model object. Yes. You can check the import statements. You see, model object is from string.framework.ui. So in this model object, the controller will add the response data. Okay, it will store the response data. And the framework will read the data from this model object. Yes. Here, see. So the framework will create the model object explicitly, and it will pass that model object to this method, controller's method. And controller can add the response data to the model object. That's it. So controller need not return this model object to anyone. Okay. Yes. It need not return the model object to anyone here. So now I want this method to process that form request. I want this method to process the form request here. So what to do here? First of all, you have to configure a URL for this method. Okay. You know what? Here for this method also, I will configure the same URL. For this method also, I'm going to configure the same URL. What is it? Process order. How come it's possible to configure the same URL? Yes, you can do that. For two methods, we can have the same URL, but make sure that the HTTP method is different. So I'll use post method here. Yes, I'll use post method. Now, what does that mean? Can someone explain this? So, how the clients can place the request for this method so that this method can process that request? Yes. Yes, how the clients can place the request for this method. So the clients have to use this URL process order. Clients are supposed to use this URL process order. And what should be the HTTP method? What should be the HTTP method which we are supposed to use here? Post. So if the client places a request using for this URL process order using HTTP method post, yes, that's right. So using HTTP method post, so this method will be called. Okay, yes. So here now this method it needs that form data, right? It needs that form data. So the framework what it does is here before it calls this method, it will populate the form data into the order object. It will populate the form data into the order object and it will pass that order object here to this method. It will also pass that order object to this method, I can say. Yes, 34 happens. So we have to also add that parameter. We need to also add that parameter. That order object also you need to add it. Yes, that should be one of the parameters for this method here. You see, this is how you'll add the parameter for that method. Yeah, just a second. Now in the controller, you're supposed to write the code to process that order. But I'll just read that order details first of all. Let's see whether really the data is populated into that order object or not. That is what I'll try to check. Order dot get product ID. Quantity. So what I do is here, this method now it should return a string. So what is that string? What string this method is supposed to return? Yes. So this method it is supposed to return that view component name, view name, which will render the response. Okay. So let's say it returns that view name Already we have couple of view components, right, in our other project here. We just copy them. We are implementing the same flow, but you see, we got some support in the framework that we are trying to avail. Okay. Yes. This time, you see, we don't have to explicitly read the request information, right? And we got validation support also. I'll show you. Yes. I want this order success case to be displayed. Okay. Yeah. Uh, Now the controller here, let's say what it does is, first of all, it will share the response data. What is the response data? In this case, the response data is the order details. I want to share this order details with that input JSP. Okay. I want to share the order details with the input JSP here. So I will add that order object, you see, to the model object. Just add it to the model object display using add attribute. Add attribute, you see, order. And you pass that order object reference. That's it. And the JSP name, I'll return it as order success. So which is nothing but the JSP, which is the view name here. That is a JSP name, which will render the response. Okay. Yeah. Now let's try to work with this code. I'll do one thing. We'll add some logging also here so that we can trace that method calls. For that, let me add a logger. I'm using log4j for this purpose. First, I'm obtaining a logger object, and then using the logger object, I'll print the details. Info show order view. So first, this method will be called. Whenever this method is called, you see, it will display that log information. Even when this method is invoked, it will display this log information again. Process order request. We have two methods. Okay. Yeah. So now let's deploy this application. I'll explain the flow once again. Don't worry. So first, let's display that form. You see, I'm using that URL order process order. Now you got the form. Okay, one more thing. I'm sorry. I guess I have to specify that method. You see, in the JSP order JSP, you have a form, right? You just add this method attribute, assign the value post. Yes, you need to do this. In the form, you got method attribute. So the method attribute value should be post. Method attribute value should be post. So what does that mean? So whenever this form is submitted, I want the client to use HTTP method post to place the request for that URL. What is the process order? So this time the client, what it does, to place the request for the URL process order, it will use HTTP method post. Okay, that is what happens. Yeah. Okay. Now refresh this page. So just a minute. I'll clear this console. Now we'll place a fresh request once again. See, I'll place the request for this URL process order using HTTP method get. Now you can check the console here. Down. Have you noticed it? Info. It displays that method details. We are adding that. We have added the log details, right? So it is displaying that method which is invoked here. The order controllers show order view method is called. Yes. Okay. Now, so let's type in some data here, some order details, and then I'll submit register. Sorry, I'll click on register form. Okay. Have you noticed it? That order success JSP page is invoked, which is displaying that order details. And down in the console, you'll find that the process order request method is called when I submit the form. So when I submit the form, you see the process order request method is called, which is actually printing these details also. Have you noticed it? So we didn't write the code to explicitly read that form data. So that form data is populated into that order object. And from the order object, we are able to read that form data. From the order object, we are able to read the form data, I can say. Yes. Okay. So I hope you people got it. So what happens here? You see, when you submit when you submit this form, you see in the form you have that action URL, process order, and method post is used. So you will find that here that HTTP method post will be used to place this request. So what happens? The framework will take that request and it will check that URL, and it finds that this is the method which is associated to that URL. So this controllers method is associated to that URL. Simply, it will call that controllers method here. Yes. But before it calls that controllers method, what it does, before it calls that controllers method, it will populate that form data into that order object. Because earlier that order object was registered, right, as a command object. So framework itself will take care of populating that form data into that order object. So which is a command object, you know that. Yes. And after it is done populating the data into that command object, it will call this method. Yes. And you see, so this method, it is also passing the command object reference. It passes that order object reference. You know that. Okay. Yeah. So now the framework, you see, sorry, this method, it will take that order object. It is printing the details. We got the data. Nowhere we have read the data. It is automatically populated. And then this controller is passing on this order object to the view component by adding it to that model object. So this way, the controller can use a model object to share the response data. And the controller this time, it directly returns that input, sorry, that JSP name, that view name, which is supposed to render the response. Yes. Now this JSP, order success JSP will be called, and it is displaying the order details here. That's it. So is it clear for you people? Anyone got any questions in this regard? Please let me know. Okay, good. So the next thing here, I want to do one more thing. What is it? Validate that form data. Okay. So validate this form data. Especially, okay, let's take this case. Now users will type in the product ID, right? Yes. User, they'll provide the product ID, right? So here, what I want to do is, I want to check whether the is product ID is valid or not. Okay. I mean, that product ID provided by the user, if, if it is existing in the records or not. Okay. I want to check that. So what you'll do. So is it a client-side validation or server-side validation here? What do you people think? It should be server-side validation, right? Yeah. So checking whether the product ID is a valid ID. I mean, whether that product is existing with that ID or not. Whether there is any product with that ID or not, I would like to check that. So for that, you see, here the application is supposed to check that product records. If that record is, if that product with ID is existing or not, right? Yes. So here, you know what? We got a validation flow here, which we can make use of for this purpose. But what would be the best way to do this? What do you people think? Can you people suggest me some solutions? of how to validate this product ID. Yes, not the client side or server side. Of course, it should be on the server side itself because you'll have the product records in the database. This product ID, whether it is valid or not, it has to be validated on the server side, not on the client side. Yes. But what would be the best way to do this? How will you do this? Server side validation itself. So you have some options here. So first of all, we can validate that product ID when the form is submitted. When the form is submitted, at that time, we can validate that product ID. That is one option. But I don't want to wait till the user submits the form to validate that product ID. So is there any other option for us? Before, yes, before submitting this form, once user is done providing the product ID, I want to validate that product ID here. Okay. So how can we do that? So we can make use of Ajax, right? So though we have this validation flow here, I can say that so if you submit the complete form, maybe at that time it would be appropriate. But here we can go for this Ajax calls. Yes, we can go for Ajax calls here. Yes, that would be the best thing. So what you will do, how will you handle this form with, validation through the Ajax? Can you people tell me what you'll do on the client side, what you're supposed to do on the server side, what you're supposed to do? Yes. I just want you to explain this. You see, on the client side, in that JSP, you can write that Ajax code, right? Yeah. So for this Ajax calls, you can use plain JavaScript, or you can go for jQuery to quickly make Ajax calls. You can go for jQuery also, right? Yes. Yeah. On the server side, how will you handle the Ajax call? So it's a server side call, right? I mean, it's a call to the server. Through Ajax, you'll call server side code, right? So on the server side, what you need to handle this Ajax call to validate that product ID. What you will do is to make server-side calls. What you will do, you need to create a controller for that purpose, right? Or use this existing controller, order controller itself. Okay, you can use that existing controller. What is it? Order controller here to handle that Ajax call. You can do that. So that is one option which you got here. So now I will leave with you people. So which one do you think is better? You can use it. Yes, fine. But I want you people to work on this task. So now you know what to do here, right? Yes, I want you people to work on this task. So the next thing is here. In the previous class, I gave you people a task. In the previous class, I gave you people a task. What was the task? Yeah, I wanted you people to add a edit option to edit the product records which are displayed and delete the product records, right? Especially, I wanted you people to concentrate on editing. Yes. So did anyone work on the task? You got some time, right? Yes. No, it didn't work on the task. So it is a good task to work on. So make sure that you work on the task, okay? So make sure that you work on the task, okay? Try to complete it. I thought you people have completed the task. Okay, I'll do one thing today. I'll stop it here. So I'll be fine by tomorrow. So we'll pick up the pace again. Okay. So you'll have your regular classes with your regular time. Yeah, especially morning batch people will have it at your regular time. You have other batches now. At your regular times, you'll have the class, and along with it, you have to attend the spring classes. Yeah. Okay then. That's it. Thank you all. Bye bye.